And all I'll tell you is that this book is set in 1976, and in this scene is the lead character, Eli, Book, and his best friend, Edie. We parked our bikes and sat right down in the shallow water that ran over black, round rocks. I loved the way the denim felt when it got wet, so heavy and full of water. Once you got blue jean cutoffs wet, you could be cool for a long while. It took them forever to dry. We pulled off our Chuck Taylors so the water could wash between our toes. Edie plucked a little rock from the riverbed and held it up to her face, looking for quartz. She turned it in the sunlight and brought it up to her mouth. Her tongue darted out and touched the skin of the stone. She had a habit of touching and tasting everything. My parents are getting a divorce, she said, just like that, then looked at me. I had heard of lots of people getting divorces, but had never known anyone who had. My parents didn't like for me to watch One Day at a Time because the mother on there was divorced and was all the time having men over to stay the night. I didn't know what to say, so I just looked at her. If I'd been older, I might have told her I was sorry or something, but in that moment, I was helpless. There was no use in asking why, because everyone knew. If anyone needed to get a divorce, it was Edie's parents. They fought all the time, loud, sometimes on the front porch or in the yard. Even when they kept their fury contained to the house, we could all hear them screaming at each other. Usually when this happened, Edie hid out in the high branches of her willow tree or within our snowball bush playhouse, or she came to my house and acted like nothing was happening. Once, she sat on the back porch with my mother and helped her with some microscope slides for Mom's class, carrying on an entire normal conversation about school while her parents raged through the walls of their house, finally bursting out onto the porch where her mother sent her father's clothes flying out into the yard. Even though she had talked to Mom as if nothing was happening, when she got ready to leave, my mother wrapped Edie up in her arms and whispered, "If you ever need me, I'm here." I had never loved my mother more, but I also felt a scratch of jealousy. It seemed she was never really there for me, not like that. It seemed she was aware of everyone's hurting except for mine. I was always thinking of when she had told Daddy she loved him more than anybody else in the world. I thought that should have been me. "It's all right, though," Edie said, even while her face betrayed what she was saying. She looked down and sucked in on her lips like she was trying to keep from crying. I had heard my mother tell Stella, her best friend, once that it was easy to not break down unless you were talking to someone you loved. That's when you lost it. "Does this mean you'll have to move off?" I said. As soon as the words left my mouth, I had a rush of panic, thinking that she would most definitely be leaving me, that she would have to go off to live with her mother somewhere else. I wanted to say, "I couldn't stand it if you left," but of course there was no way I was going to make that a known thing. "No, I'm going to stay with Daddy," she said, and this was the only time her voice broke a bit. "Mom's living here, and she's not taking me with her." Edie stood up, streams of water falling from her shorts. "They don't even know that I know yet," she said, and stomped across the riverbed. "They're planning on telling me tonight." She climbed up the fern and ivy-covered bank with ease. We rode our bicycles for a long time without speaking. We didn't talk or tell jokes or anything. Every once in a while, Edie would zoom off in a burst of speed, her brown legs pumping with all her strength, her handlebar streamers crackling in the wind. We rode way out our road to where the bridge spanned the part of the refuge river that turned wild. My mother forbade us to set foot on this bridge as it was too high, and she knew that I had bad judgment when danger presented itself. I was terrible about taking dares. If someone defied me to do something, I'd do it. We stood behind the concrete railings that lined the bridge and peered over. The water was more than 30 feet below us, and this didn't look like the refuge river we knew. Hurried along by a couple of falls, the water sizzled over mossy rocks and found out in clear, wide arcs against the big boulders that sat in its path. The sight of all that air between us and the river made my stomach jangle. "That little boy haunts this place," Edie said. "Can you feel him? No, I said, trying to convince myself. Hush. All of us children had heard the tale of a little boy who had plummeted to his death from this bridge ages ago in the 40s. He was out for a walk with his mother, and she was thinking about her husband, who was off fighting Germans. She was daydreaming, picking wildflowers beside the road, so he went on ahead. He got to the bridge and climbed the railings, thinking that it must be just like the fence that stood their backyard. See, a rail here, and here, and here, Edie said, telling the story for the 100th time. She loved to scare me. And when he got to the top railing, he thought he could just jump over onto the soft grass, like on that fence at home. His mother looked up from her flower picking about the time he reached the top rail. She started running to him, Edie said. I bet she dropped them flowers right quick. I could see her too. I had imagined this mother many times, her hair falling down out of its pins when she ran, her hands white knuckled, holding onto the rail, while she peered over and saw her little boy lying dead on the rocks down there. I thought she had most likely gone down there and carried him back up the steep bank herself. I thought about this for a time. I betted myself that she fell down in the road with him stretched out across her legs. I could see every bit of it, playing in my mind like a movie. I can definitely feel him, Edie said, her eyes scanning the space around us in search of his ghost showing itself. He stays here, he does. Shut up, man. Edie had frightened herself too, though, and somehow we both knew to start pedaling at the same time. We pumped our legs hard to get as far away from the bridge as we could. I kept seeing the little boy, though, pausing atop the railing for 1 second before he stepped into the air. I tried to stop myself from thinking about it, or I'd end up obsessing about it all night long, the way I sometimes lay awake thinking about the atom bomb or the rapture, which naturally led to me thinking about eternity, which, even if spent in heaven, was bound to get boring eventually. The June wind washed over us as we pedaled down our road, sometimes racing, sometimes riding with no hands. After a thick time of silence, I turned my transistor radio back on, and we sung along with Melanie on a brand new key, and before long, Edie was laughing again.